and this is an event organized by the New York City Vegetarian and Vegan Meetup Group.
Essentially, we can all realize that when we look at the history of our society, and again, there's a chapter in the Little Peace Diet that goes into this, we can see that something happened around 10,000 years ago in what is today the Middle East, Western Asia, Iraq area, and people started herding animals for the first time, and then human beings really changed. I mean, we changed a lot. That was the last revolution. And I think in many ways it was a revolution of reductionism, of violence and war, unfortunately. And we have been born into that culture. It's the same culture that evolved there. It was the herding revolution. It was a slow revolution, but it basically changed everything. And the cultures that came out of that area, there was about, I guess, 5 main things that happened. One was animals, the status of animals was just reduced. It's well understood that animals were really respected as cohabitants of the earth with us and lots of capacities. But once we started to just own them as property, cows, pigs, first it was wild sheep and then wild goats and then later wild cows, they just became slaves. And so we have to abuse them, so their status dropped. That led to the arising of a wealthy elite class of herders. If you read the ancient text, I used to teach college courses in these ancient texts like the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Iliad, the Odyssey, the ancient Old Testament, and the ancient Greek tragedies. You can just see there's these kings, and they're wealthy and powerful because they own livestock. Livestock are wealth. The word capital, we get our word capitalism from, means head. Capita is head. So this ownership of animals creates this proto-capitalist system of domination of the whole society by the wealthy elite class of herders, which we still have going today. They invented war. There had never been war before. The oldest word for war is the ancient word gavia, which means the desire for more cows. Out of war, we got slavery. Whoever lost the war, the animals became the property of the victors. That was the whole reason for the war, was so you can get all their capital and get rich. That was the wealth. But the people is a small step from seeing animals as slaves to seeing people as slaves. And so they started owning human beings as property. So for the first time, we started having slavery. That all comes from animal agriculture. If we want to eat cheeseburgers and hamburgers and fish sticks, we're going to have domination by a wealthy elite and war and slavery, because these historically have always been together, and also the domination of women, because the whole idea of animal agriculture is seeing the female merely as a breeder, reducing the feminine capacity and mother-child bonding, breaking those bonds. So this is a thing that I think really hurt human beings at a very deep level. We had to start being brutal, and the role model for young boys to emulate was hard, tough, disconnected males, capable of violence against animals, against rival herders. So this whole society, spread, and we're born into it today, and it's still spreading through the large corporations, financial institutions, the World Bank, the IMF, Cargill, Monsanto, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Burger King, McDonald's, that whole thing. I call it the military, industrial, meat, medical, pharmaceutical, media, banking complex. It's complex. But that whole thing, but it's based at its core on animal agriculture. So if anyone is taking out their wallet and paying for meat, dairy products, and eggs, that is, so when we question that, when we question animal agriculture, we're going to the root of the whole thing. And this is liberation. We liberate animals, we liberate hungry people, we liberate workers. I mean, think of the fact that we have all these people stabbing animals all day. Madeline and I have been to these places. I mean, you do not want to even see the terrible ordeals that animals go through, but the people that have to do, can you imagine having that as a job all day, to impregnate animals on rape racks all day or stab them? I mean, these workers have the highest rates of injuries, of suicide, drug addiction. So we're paying for work to bring out the worst in human beings. We're paying for food shortages, essentially, because it's well known that we could feed everyone on a really less land. We're growing enough food every year to feed 9 or 10 to 11 billion people. No one argues that. The fact that we have roughly almost 1 billion people starving, and that food shortages are the main reason we have conflict in the world. This is a driving force of conflict. So the whole idea is to see that we live on an abundant planet, we can feed everyone, we can stop contributing to and causing violence towards animals and human beings, we can have more compassion for our own bodies, and then also to see what it does to our inner landscape of our consciousness. I think this is the other aspect that World Peace Diet, we really try to go into that in depth. And the basic idea, just briefly, is that when we're sitting down at the table and eating these foods, which are quite toxic to us on the physical level, we're also eating attitudes that are toxic. And there's many different attitudes that are engaged when we eat animal foods. I'll just give you a couple of examples. One is the attitude of disconnectedness. Every meal essentially is teaching us at a deep level, don't make the connection. Just stay shallow. It's just bacon. It's just a hamburger. This is a very deep teaching that's essentially injected into us without our permission every meal in our society. And when you have this teaching going out over and over again to children, and it's repeated to as adults, to disconnect, because that's what animal-based foods do. They force us to disconnect. We don't want to make the connection. It makes us uncomfortable to think about what that pig went through if I'm eating bacon, or what the cow went through. We just want to stay shallow and not think about that. But I have a PhD in education, and the whole idea in education is understanding what is intelligence. Intelligence is the capacity to make connections. That's what it is. So if you have the primary ritual in an entire society is to reduce the capacity of people to make connections, what's it doing to our intelligence? I mean, it reduces our intelligence as individuals and especially as a society. And it explains a lot. Really, you have to realize that what veganism is simply yearning to engage our natural capacity to make connections, to be intelligent, to see the deep picture, to see beyond the surface, to trust our own wisdom. The whole attitude in animal agriculture is to trust authorities. Do whatever they say to do. It doesn't have to make sense. Just do it, and just eat it because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what our tribe does. That's what we do. So you do it. Even though we know rationally and also in our feelings that it's violent, it's abusive, it's destructive, it's the worst possible thing. It's nothing good about it. But we do it anyway. So because animal agriculture, that's the thing. Animal agriculture, when we really look deeply, it is the driving force behind basically all the outer problems we have in the world. When you really look carefully at the environmental devastation, the conflict, it's actually animal agriculture that's causing most of these outer problems. But the thing about animal agriculture is it doesn't just stop there with causing these outer problems. It's even more insidious. It actually goes into us and reduces and almost destroys our capacity to solve these problems, to even understand what it is. It just blinds us. So we lose our capacity to make connections. We can't feel deeply. We can't make connections deeply. Not only our intellectual intelligence, but also our emotional intelligence is reduced. We become numb, we become desensitized. And it also has this basic attitude of just commodification. Every day we just, as a society, I mean, think about it. As a society, we have no problem reducing billions of animals to mere matter. They're sold by the pound. Cows and pigs and chickens are sold by the pound. They're just, how much they're worth is how much they weigh. Can you believe we do that? I mean, we're actually doing that. We look into the eyes of these beings. I mean, if someone came up, how many of you have a dog or a cat at some point in your life, or some animal companion? If someone came up to you and said, "How much does your dog weigh?" I'll you sell it by the pound. We'd be like on our feet saying, "No, this is my friend." But we do this, and you can imagine if a so-called superior, more powerful species started to do that with us, right? We're just going to eat you. We're going to buy and sell you by the pound. And I'd say, wait a minute, I mean, I can play the piano, doesn't that count? I can play something for you. No, we're just going to eat you, we don't care, Wait, we don't care if you can play the piano. I mean, we would think, this superior species, I mean, they're so stupid. They can't even see that I'm a being. I mean, that's what we are. It's human beings. We're so disconnected. We just sell these beings by the pound. And this gross, crass materialism, philosophical materialism, just seeing beings as matter, doesn't end with them. We do it to ourselves. We turn ourselves into objects. We turn our whole world. Everybody has a price. Everybody is sold by the pound, really. So, again, if we want to create a world of freedom and justice and equality, we can do it. But not if we're going to eat animals. Not if we're going to reduce animals. Because when we do that, we reduce ourselves and our intelligence. We make our own liberation impossible. Because we can't be free if we're imprisoning others. And so understanding these attitudes, and there's like I say, there's a whole range of them. And the other one, there's several other ones that I usually mention, but I'll just mention one more since time is a little bit short here, is the domination of Sophia. Sophia is, I refer to Sophia. Sophia was the Greek goddess of wisdom. And the word means wisdom. It was great being in Greece, actually, just a couple of months ago, and speaking in Athens at the Animal Rights March and talking about Sophia. And the people really get it, because that's their word, Sophia. And it means wisdom, but it's feminine. And it refers, I think, at a deep level to the wisdom within all of us, whether we're men or women. We have this inner wisdom, and it's the wisdom to love and nurture and protect life. And it's the wisdom that's really the foundation of a healthy society. It's the wisdom that mothers have naturally at a deep level to love and protect and nurture their babies that are born. Even those little babies are a lot of trouble and everything else, but they give and love and care for the babies. And that's the foundation of health. If we don't get that when we're little babies, we're not going to be healthy physically or psychologically. Our society will definitely not be healthy. But what's animal agriculture? It's based at its core on really three things. One is enslaving, the other is killing, and the third one is raping, breeding without their permission, or just impregnating them and stealing the babies and breaking the bond between the mother and her offspring. You kill, and this is true on any animal operation. We should really be clear about that. It's not like factory farms are bad and backyard farms are good. I mean, on all animal agriculture operations, it's the same story. I own you, I own your baby, I'm going to steal your baby, kill your baby, I'm going to impregnate you again, I'm going to steal your baby again. And we do this over and over again. And we have to see that we cause enormous suffering to these beings. But then when we cause that and we eat that, we're doing the same thing to ourselves. We're repressing the sacred feminine dimension of life that cares for life. And I think that's what veganism is at its core, essentially, is Sophia, the sacred feminine dimension within all of us, men and women, rising up and saying, all right, I'm going to protect the earth, I'm going to protect the children, I'm going to protect our life together, and caring, this basic feminine capacity to care and give and protect life. And I think, men also have this capacity. But as soon as you force little kids to eat this stuff, and we create these systems of violence and oppression, then it does something at a very profound level to sort of hijack our entire trajectory. So this is it. I think we're making a course correction as human beings now. People are beginning to awaken. I guess the question is whether we will awaken fast enough to be able to make this really to have a future. And I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that the more we understand this, not just the shallow level of how the animals suffer and how it's bad for our health, and that's good to understand, but to go deeper and understand the cultural dynamics, the deep psychological dynamics, the dynamics of the shadow archetype structures in our consciousness, then we begin to see that we could really, each one of us can heal ourselves, and we can be part of the healing of our society. And that is a reason that every morning we can wake up and we can just give thanks. We've got another day that we can do something to help. We can be, in some way, we can be part of the solution here. We don't have to just get up and be part of the problem. Nobody wants to do that. But be part of the solution. And I think each one of you, all of you, I know in this room there are enormous capacities of ingenuity and wit and wisdom and creativity and imagination and caring and kindness. And each one of us as individuals has a gift to give, something to bring to this movement. And our life goes by so quickly. I mean, I can't believe how fast it goes by. It was not that long ago. I remember I was just in my early, maybe mid-20s. I was taking this class in Chinese language in Oakland. And I remember the woman who was the teacher said, if you ever go to China, you have to remember that if you're not at least 60 years old, you don't know anything. If you try to tell people something like you're some kind of authority and you're not 60 years old, they'll just laugh at you. Because it's a society that really trusts the elders and honors the elders, and you have to have some wisdom. It takes a while to get that. And I remember thinking, 60? I'm never going to be 60. I mean, that's like, no, not for me. I'm not going to be that old. And it was so neat because a few years ago, we finally started going to China, quite a bit, and the Buddhist monasteries were, basically paying our way to go over there. It's so great to be in a society where the churches are trying to promote veganism. That's what they're promoting. They're paying to have the vegan message promoted. And so we were, okay, we'll promote it. And so we were giving all these lectures, and they always had at least 400 or 500 people in the audience night after night. They always had a grand piano on the stage I could play. It was amazing how. But it was so great to stand and say to these people, now you've got to listen to me because I am 60 years old. They said, well, you don't look like you're 60. I said, well, that's because I'm vegan, but I am 60. So. But the thing is, the point, I guess, in that is that our lives go by very quickly, really. I mean, in a snap of a finger, all of us, not to be morose about it, but we are going to leave this world. We are all going to go. And so at that moment, just to realize that how we live our life is by how we use this opportunity that we have to be part of the solution, to contribute something, and to really question the part of ourselves and the voices in society that want to pull us into abdicating and not listening to that inner voice of wisdom that sees that we have a gift to give and to bring that gift to the world. And I think when we do that, it doesn't mean our life will be easy, but it does mean we'll be living our life, we'll be making our contribution. And I think we can support each other in doing that, creating communities of support. That's the beautiful thing. And that's why I love what Saurabh's doing, and David, and all of you, I think, in certain ways are creating communities where we can bring this message to other people, we can share this message, and we can work together to create the healing of our world. And I think when we do that, we begin to lay the groundwork for a pathway to this door that we can see it's there, and we can go through that doorway together, a doorway that leads into a future that is positive. It's definitely possible. This earth, how many of you have noticed that the earth is beautiful? I'm sure some of you have noticed, right? The earth is beautiful, the earth is abundant, the earth can feed everybody. The thing is that the earth is, not only is it beautiful, but the basic idea is that there's nothing objectively stopping us from living in harmony on this earth. It's just the animal agriculture and the underlying orientation toward domination and oppression, exploitation of the sacred feminine dimension of life and of each other and of the animals on the earth. And going vegan is actually an outer manifestation of an inner awakening of caring and kindness and respect for all expressions of life, of the vulnerable, and protecting them. And when we understand that at a deep level, we realize what a great gift it is to understand this and to be able to live this and then to be able to share it in the nitty-gritty of our daily lives with the hardest animals, which are the human animals. It's easy to be kind to cows and pigs. They're not insulting us, but when other human beings, they can really test us. But to live our lives as expressions of what veganism is, like Gandhi always said, to be as best we can the change that we want to see in the world, and to just tell our own story. That's that word he used, which I love, satyagraha. It means truth power. Power that each one of us has to just speak our own truth. Sometimes people ask me, they say, if I'm on an elevator and I only have 1 minute or half a minute to try to plant the seed, what can I say? And I think the basic idea is to plant the seed of our own experience. And I think when we speak a universal truth that is true for everyone, then we plant a seed that's very effective, especially if we're living this. Because if we're living it, then people feel that we're congruent, that the words that we're speaking and the way we're delivering them, it's not so much what we say, it's how we say it and who we are when we say it. It's who we are that really speaks. And so I think that the basic message is something like this. I'm so glad, I'm so grateful that I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods all those years that I was because I was just following orders. And I realized it wasn't in my best interest, I'm not doing it anymore, and it's great. Then don't say anything more. Just stop there, and you've just planted a seed because it's like a depth charge. Because it's true. Every single person who's eating animal foods, that is their story. The only reason anyone does it is because they're just following orders. No one does it because it's their own free choice. The orders, everybody knows these orders are not in their best interests. And so when we say I discovered that the only reason I was eating animal foods was because I was just following orders, and now I'm not doing it anymore, and it's great, you've just showed people at a very deep level a way out. And they may forget you if you didn't, they may not know, whatever. They'll go vegan. They won't thank you. They won't even remember this conversation. That's okay. The whole idea is, as the Bhagavad Gita says, to just don't be attached to the fruit of our actions. Just do the best we can to speak our own truth. I discovered this, and it's been great for me. And the irony is, I think, when we try to change other people, then they fight back. They resist. And in a way, I don't blame them. If someone came up to me and said, "I'm going to change you," I'd say, "Okay, try it." I've heard that. And we have that idea, like we're the vegan, you're not the vegan, I'm the vegan, I'm always right, you're the vegan, you're always wrong. I'm going to change you, and so it doesn't work. But if we just realize that we're all on the same side, we've all been wounded, and just share our story without trying to change people, lo and behold, they start changing. Because they're choosing, they see that there's something that attracts them and draws them forward. And I think when our movement matures to the point where we're all, as a whole movement, we're embodying this idea, then I think our movement more and more becomes unstoppable. It's kind of like Walt Whitman said in his poem, Song of the Open Road. There's a line I just love in there. He says, "I and mine, we do not convince by arguments. We convince by our presence." Now that basic idea, that it's good to know the arguments, it's good to know the story, it's good to know the understanding. I mean, it's really good to know, but the more we can embody this understanding, rather than judge people and say, this is how it is, that we understand this and we're doing the best we can to live this and create context, create communities that support this, then I think we begin to contribute to this unstoppable movement. And I'm so grateful, really, to all of you, because I just have such a strong feeling that together we are doing something worthwhile with our lives, with the precious time that we have on this earth, and that we are creating in some way a legacy of freedom and liberation and sustainability and abundance, not only for us but for future generations. And it has to come from that deep level of caring for the least, caring for animals, ecosystems, those who have no voice, really caring for them. So I guess I'll stop here. I just want to, just thank all of you for your patience. And I know it's the hardest thing. The vegan message, really, it's the one thing people do not want to hear, right? It goes to the crowd. I remember we go to these progressive churches, unity churches, and speak. And for quite a few years, I would try to bring the vegan message there. And after a while, the ministers would say, I'd say, I can come and speak at your church, and they'd say, yeah, we heard about you. You can come here, but don't say anything about animals. Don't say anything about vegetarianism or vegan. Because the whole idea is we're spiritual, but we don't want to hear about that. So I understand it's like the one thing people don't want to hear. But the more we can bring it in a way that people can hear, I think the more we create a positive future for everyone. So maybe I'll just close with this final story, because sometimes people say, well, what about our health? What about our physical health? And don't you need to eat a little protein to be healthy, or to have some calcium to have strong bones or something? And the good news is that really we understand this isn't true. But I remember a few years ago, Madeline and I were at the Grand Canyon. How many of you have been to the Grand Canyon? Some of you probably, yeah. Anyway, if you haven't been there, it's this big canyon in Arizona. But it's really kind of takes your breath away. It's like, whoa, it's like way down there, You're standing on the rim, and way at the bottom is the Colorado River. And so we were there for a few days, but we had our RV. We lived in an RV on the road for 18 years and traveling around and doing events. And I remember we saw that they had these signs everywhere that said, danger, warning, never attempt to hike all the way down to the Colorado River and back up in one day. That is not a day trip. People die trying to do that. It's too far. Don't try to do it. So I said to Mel, I'm going to try that. And so anyway, so the next day I took off and went down. It's called the Bright Angel Trail. It goes down, 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 forever down. And I remember I finally get down to the Colorado River, and there was a big sign there that said, no swimming. So I took a quick swim. And then turned around, I came back up, and I was actually back up on the rim again just before noon for lunch. And Mel said, wow, how'd you do that so fast? And I said, well, it's not that big a thing. I mean, those signs, they're just not made for vegans. Those signs are made for people eating the standard American diet. They probably would die if they tried to do that. But the basic idea is to realize that if we're eating the foods that we're designed for, if we're just basically living our lives in alignment with our purpose, then we're creating a foundation for health and happiness for ourselves. And each one of us has our own unique way of bringing this message to the world and fulfilling our own mission. And it's joyful, I think, underlying everything. There's a great joy, even though there's an agony. We know the agony of the animals, the agony of people, that's the background. But there's also an enormous joy in the awakening that is happening to contribute to that together. So much love to you all. Thank you all so much. We're going to kind of wrap it up here. What do you think? Should we, anything else? Or
first, let's, yeah.
Dr. Tuttle, we are so honored hugely honored that you are here. I'm so moved by you, by your extreme eloquence, by your brilliant intelligence, by your loving and compassionate heart. You are just such an example and so moving. We're so honored that you are here with us tonight doing this. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you just say real quick, still have the donations jar. If you please, would consider supporting Will, because they don't take money for anything. And so please, if you can, we're going to have it up here. And also the books are going to be for sale. So for those who would like to talk to Dr. Tuttle, we'll gather at the table. Please make your way. And if you would like to purchase books or CDs, I urge you to do so. Will, we love you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And Madeline, too, for all the work that she does, too. So let's see Madeline.
Yeah, for Madeline. Yay!
Yes, absolutely.
So I think, we were thinking it's maybe a little bit difficult to take questions right now, but I'm happy to answer questions individually. I'm happy to sign copies of the Will Peace Diet or any of these other books. We also have a book of my piano music written out. If you like to play the piano, you can play some of the music. And that one has paintings, if you want to bring a painting home. And so we're just happy to answer more questions here at the table. All right, much love.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being so patient with us.